Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene says government will prioritise getting Eskom on a solid financial footing before going ahead with any move on partial privatisation. The minister reiterated today that he sees nothing unusual about the private sector investing in the energy space. Nompumelelo Siziba caught up with the minister at the Discovery Financial Planning Summit in Sandton. She started by asking the minister what timelines Treasury is looking at to make a decision on the possible privatising moves.
It's a process that government will take into account a number of things. The first is that at the moment we assist with just restoring the fiscal and the financial sustainability of Eskom. The second is making sure that Eskom is able to deliver on its mandate. And I don't think this is the time. But private sector participation is already in the energy space happening. And I would want to believe that the issue of the IPPs, the issue of cogeneration are already, an indication of government's willingness for the private sector to participate in energy generation and distribution.
Minister, but given the challenges that we're having with electricity outages and so on, surely you do concede that we need decisions very quickly on this issue?
Look, I don't think that's the only thing that needs agency. The first thing that needs agency is to make sure that Eskom is on a proper financial footing. Because even if you were to be looking at involving the private sector, if you involve the private sector at the time when the organization is ailing, I think you would actually be selling yourself short. But government is actually saying, one, no matter what happens at the end of the process, government will continue to hold a majority stake in Eskom because of its strategic importance. But the other thing is, if you look at the comparison we've always been making, which is the point I made in there with when Bruce was asking about this thing, was that remember that the private sector already plays a part in Eskom in the form of debt, because the private sector does buy bonds when Eskom goes into the capital market. So now you need to find the comparison now, which is better between holding debt, at what cost, and equity, because that's the center of the debate, and I think it's something that should be given time to mature.
South Africa has a problem of a triple deficit at the public finances level, a deficit at the household finances level, and a deficit vis-a-vis trading with the rest of the world. Do you think we're making inroads into solving these problems?
I think we are. I have. There were two things I said when Bruce asked me what this industry can do in order to play its part. The first, I said, according to our National Development Plan, we call upon the private sector and government to work together in building our beloved country. In what form? We're saying this industry actually sits with resources that can better be mobilized in augmenting our infrastructure rollout program, and working with government. There are opportunities there. But then the other thing is playing in the space of promoting the culture of savings. And I said Discovery is one of those that have actually taken advantage of behavioral economics in terms of actually assisting the nation to look at their behavior in order to address some of our economic and social ills.
Minister, there's a perception, particularly from the construction industry. Every year the finance minister promises billions of rand of investment in infrastructure, but according to them, they're not seeing this coming through in their projects. Is this a reality or a myth?
I don't think it's a reality, because in a glaring example is the Transnet locomotives or the rolling stock rollout. You have seen, there's been tremendous opportunity for the private sector, and the private sector has taken that with both hands. We've seen in our roads infrastructure, the private sector, it's construction companies that build those roads. There isn't a government company that builds the roads. And all those, I'm talking, tangible infrastructure projects in the ICT industry, all the players there. I mean, it's just that there will never be enough for everybody. then those that are still in the queue will always be complaining that our time has not come. But I think the private sector itself should also be proactive, and that's what I always say when I get an opportunity to talk to people who think that government is not doing enough to crowd in the private sector. They should also be proactive to identify those that they think they would be able to participate in.
It's all very well and good to say to the private sector, come to the party, but yet the private sector is always complaining that there isn't any policy certainty, and then there's the cost of red tape. What do you say to that?
It's again a matter of generalization of the red tape. You know, in the presidential working group, our Director General, Mr. Fuzile, he co-chairs the one that just looks at, that focuses on that red tape part of it with business. Because of the meetings that we've had with business and government, that came up as a concern. So a subcommittee was established, which is co-chaired by our Director General and Bobby Godsell from the business side, that when they identify that bottleneck, so that we are specific and we know what we're addressing, because you can't just be talking bottlenecks and you don't know what bottlenecks we're talking. So that if there is any of those, and the two of them have a task of bringing that to the relevant department, be it if it's the department, water licensing or whatever, and if there is any bureaucratic red tape that is an impediment to the implementation of a particular project, so that we don't generalize. And I think it's paying dividends.